Welcome to the Runes of Ranudar. This is an episodic fantasy fiction currently being published on Royal Road, and there's a link below in the description. A brief recap of our prior chapter. After fearing missing a season's work, Swordswoman Shellah Skyfast was approached by a mysterious stranger about a potential new client. And now, Chapter 2. "Jonas, I tell you," said Shellah as they hurried from the Swordsman's Guild to the Briar and Rose Inn where their potential client was staying. "This one might be weird. I knew you were in town, and since your last gig went sideways—" "Shell," he interrupted, "my daughter just showed up with her 5 hungry babies and no sign of her no-good husband. I need the money, and I need to get out of that house." He walked even more quickly. "I don't even need to know any details. I just need to get out and let the guild know where to drop some funds every once in a while." "Oh, great goddess," swore Shellah. "That sounds like hell. I never wanted any myself." "I thought we were done with babies." "Done," he huffed. "This inn is around the corner, right? It's not often we're in the swankier side of town." Shellah laughed, which eased her anxiety a little. "We've both been to Coram City and Lorinium. In comparison, the Briar and Rose is a roadside wayside." "True." The street wound into a neighborhood that was a little brighter, cleaner, and better smelling than much of Northport. The inn was a broad-faced, whitewashed building with new thatch and neat shrubbery along its front wall. Torrent greensmen awaited by the double doors at the entry as the second watch bell rang through the city. "Good morning, Miss Skyfast. I am glad to see you were not delayed." Torrent bowed in greeting. "Mr. Greensman, this is Jonas Reiser, a fellow licensed swordsman. He has much experience and great references from the merchant guilds." "Pleased to meet you, Mr. Greensman," Jonas said, extending his hand. Torrent shook it. "Reiser, that's a Laren name, is it not?" asked Torrent. "Yeah, my great-granddad's family originally came from there, before the wars. We've been settled in Coram for a few generations now. My father was in the king's service, as was I." Torrent nodded. "Excellent. Let's meet my mistress. She's inside awaiting us in her sitting room, so we can continue introductions there." Shellah and Jonas followed Torrent into the inn. He briefly whispered to the innkeeper to bring up refreshments. They went up softly carpeted steps to a sunny sitting room where a lavish gowned woman waited, backlit by the mid-morning sun. Her full silk skirts rustled as she turned on her divan to receive them. "Miss Nessa, here are Shellah Skyfast and Jonas Reiser, the swordsmen I've engaged for your service." Torrent sat down and gestured they do the same. "Hello," said Nessa. "I am Nessa Nafasar of Coram City." Shellah noted Nessa was a bit younger than herself, though in an ageless way that made it hard to determine how much younger, and how much artifice was involved in that illusion. There was no gray in her dark hair, and her pale skin was unlined without marks. Her rich red gown cast a glow on her face, which further added to her appearance of youth. Her voice, however, was rich and confident, and she wore a peculiar resinous perfume, scented with other herbs Shellah couldn't quite place. The innkeeper arrived with a knock on the door, bearing a tray of tea, rolls, and fruit. Torrent took it and placed it by Nessa, who delicately took an apple. She polished it on her napkin. Shellah was struck by the similarity of a painting she once saw in Coram City of an enchantress bearing a poisoned apple. That was the scent, the perfume of the city's alchemists and sorcerers and their exotic collections of rare incense. "Ma'am, Mr. Greensman says you would like to travel to the Shielings?" Shellah asked, suddenly wishing she felt a little more kindly towards her knitting and little room at Cooper's. "Yes," Nessa replied, without further clarification as to why. "We'd like to depart this week," added Torrent. "Ordinarily, I would chaperone and support Miss Nessa's travels, but I have an errand for our mutual employer back in Coram City that cannot wait. Of course, we would pay handsomely for her safety and comfort when abroad, particularly in these dangerous times." "We will need to secure passage to Dundarlo, which should not be impossible," said Jonas, "but we'll need to see who's willing to sail with the reavers in these waters. That might be expensive?" Torrent waved as if that would not be an issue. "And Mr. Greensman said last night you'd need to visit elsewhere in the Shielings?" asked Shellah. "Also on the main island?" Nessa's face creased slightly with annoyance. "My business there will depend upon what I learn from my contact in Dundarlo. I'd rather not speculate until I know more details. And outside of the general route and travel requirements, would you need to know more?" We would just need to know risks and anything necessary to ensure your safety, ma'am. Your privacy, of course, is of utmost importance, and we would travel with the greatest discretion, reassured Jonas. We will require the standard guild retainer paid up front to the guild office, and that all guild standards be met, including a signed contract for scope of work, clarified Shellah. I just want to be clear that we will not defend contraband or perform other illegal activities per the guild standards of the kingdoms. Jonas gave her a questioning side glance. Of course, confirmed Torrend with a nod to his lady. Though our errand is a private matter, we will be doing nothing outside of the rule of law here in Coram. I will attend to any guild paperwork and fees with both of you later, and we can discuss schedules as well. He rose to usher them out the door. Nessa remained seated on her couch, face unreadable. The door closed between them. Shellah made a show of walking towards the stairs, then put her finger to her lips and pointed at the door. They waited for a moment to listen. Really, Torrend, this is who you found? 2 old merchant guardsmen? It's remarkable they don't audibly creak as they move about, they heard Nessa say. They're the only 2 swordsmen in town at the moment who can travel immediately, and the woman is a native Shieling. That will help you over there with your errand once you've spoken to. They couldn't make out the name, Torrend said. Her references checked out. Strong, known to be shrewd, highly regarded. I'm sure his will as well. She asked a lot of questions, said Nessa. If everything goes to plan, there will be nothing to question, said Torrend. They heard a floorboard scrape as he must have moved closer to the door. Shellah and Jonas retreated down the thickly carpeted stairs. Chapter 3. It took a couple of days to wrap up the guild contracts and to secure passage on a small merchant ship headed to the Shielings. Torrend met with Shellah and Jonas at Cooper's. Shellah's travel bag and sword were upstairs, and the rest of her few belongings were packed and stowed at the inn for her return in a few weeks. Are you 2 both ready? Torrend asked as he handed them a round of mugs. Yeah, my family's settled, said Jonas. They're more than ready to have me out of the house for a fortnight. Shellah also nodded after a sip of beer. Reavers have been seen around the outer Shielings, but not yet by Dun Darlow. The captain of the Wind Dancer seemed confident the channel remains clear for now. Dun Darlow's chief is maintaining security around the port and the main island. Your mistress should have a safe sea journey forth and back to Northport, and we'll make sure she's comfortable and gets quality lodgings in town. Excellent, said Torrend. I will leave Nessa in good hands. I'll make sure she's there to meet you at the ship by the first watch bell for departure. And we'll stay in contact with the Wind Dancer while we're in Dun Darlow to ensure we can get return berths back here once Miss Nessa knows her business and plans in town, said Jonas. Any further word, Torrend, on what her business is there, or even just the overall schedule? Asked Shellah. The longer we remain, the risk of the port closing due to the Reavers grows. Should be just a few days, he reassured. She's meeting her old mentor for some advice. From what I understand, he's a gentle old man with a lot of books. Please don't question her on specifics about her errand, as we're on sensitive business from our employer, but this will just be a few days looking at dusty old documents and libraries in the Shielings. Straightforward, said Jonas. We'll keep her safe. The Reavers won't brave the Dun, said Shellah, and I know the town like the back of my hand. I was apprenticed there. Torrend placed his cup on the table and rose. I will see you 2 in the morning. I'll leave you to wrap up your night. He bowed a little to them, then departed. Humor me here, said Jonas after getting them a second round. What could possibly be at a library in the Shielings worth risking your life to brave Reaver-infested waters? I don't know, said Shellah after a long swig of the beer, but when we met her the other day, she smelled of the big magic. They met Torrend and Miss Nessa on the Wind Dancer's pier at the first bell. The Wind Dancer was a sturdy merchant bark with 2 tall masts and furled white sails. Kegs of ale and wine and bales of merchandise were still being loaded via a gentle ramp into the cargo hold. The chief mate asked the few passengers to wait on the pier while the cargo wrapped up and the manifest was tallied. Nessa rocked back and forth on her heels impatiently, her 2 bags by her feet. She was dressed for travel in a plain gown, sturdy boots, and heavy cloak. The breeze loosened her dark hair free of her hood, where it flicked past her angry dark eyes and pale face. Why aren't we on board yet, Torrend? She hissed. Shellah and Jonas did not speak but looked at one another. This might be a long voyage for just 2 weeks. I can check again, but it's easier for them to load the lower holds first. That way you don't have to trip on bales and kegs as you're dealing with that ramp, said Torrent, tone and expression carefully controlled. It occurred to Shellah he might be glad of some time away from his demanding mistress. Folks, we're just about ready, called the chief mate from the deck above. A little more patience and we'll welcome you aboard in a few. I'll take my leave now, said Torrent. My own ship to Coram City awaits. Lady, I'll meet you there later this spring. In the meantime, Miss Skyfast and Mr. Reiser will ensure your safe and comfortable journey. Thank you, Torrent. Safe travels, said Nessa. She bent to pick up her bags to find Shellah and Jonas had already each taken one. We've got them, ma'am, said Jonas. Now, if you'll follow me, it looks like they're ready for the passengers, and Shellah will follow behind you. Shellah noticed Nessa's eyes following Torrent down the docks and then heard her sigh. She seemed to relax a little. Yes, let's get going. The sooner this voyage starts, the better, she said. Thanks for carrying my bags. Of course, said Shellah. As they followed the small queue of the other passengers up the ramp, the first mate showed them to their cabin on the first deck below. Per Mr. Greenspan, the ladies are supposed to share a room, and Mr. Reiser will have a bunk with the merchants, said the mate as he opened the door to their cabin. We'll have some hot cider for everyone in the galley shortly. It's cold out there today. Nessa was about to enter, but Shellah blocked the entry with her arm. Ma'am, if you will, I should always inspect accommodations for any possible threats first, just to check. I'm here for your safety, after all. Shellah took the second bag from Jonas, and the men made their way down the narrow hallway towards the common passenger bunks in the rear. Nessa nodded, and Shellah took a brief look through the room. It was small, with no noticeable peepholes or hiding spots. The linens looked fresh, and everything was recently cleaned. Shellah deposited Nessa's bags on a luggage shelf and placed her own at the foot of the smaller bunk by the door, then waved her in. I can ask if there's a spare bunk in the common room if you'd rather have your privacy, ma'am, offered Shellah. Not necessary. It's rare that I have any company, and this is going to be a long trip if you keep calling me ma'am. Please call me Nessa. Nessa threw off her cloak. She sat on the bed and removed her tall black boots, then rummaged in a bag to find some comfortable slippers. Phew, I'm glad this journey has begun. I feared we'd be trapped in Northport forever, and Torrent smothers like I'm made out of glass or something. Shellah removed her own cloak and hung it on a peg behind the door. Journeys always find a way somehow, and please call me Shellah. So what's the plan while we're on board? Nessa asked. She flopped back onto her pillow. We should be at sea for 3 days, weather and tides depending. As we settle in here, Jonas will tour the ship with the first mate to see if there's anything worrisome, and we'll ask about the other passengers. They all looked like ordinary merchants, but you never know. We'll take meals together in the galley. I will taste the food first, again, just in case. If you'd like any fresh air, Jonas or I will accompany you on deck, and if you need any privacy, just ask and I will sit outside your door. And if you need any privacy, asked Nessa. Jonas will sit outside your door, confirmed Shellah. I also know a couple of handy cantrips for seasickness. I am typically on the merchant fleet most of the year, so if you have any questions about the ship or the waters, just let me know. I'd like to take a nap, said Nessa, and later I will have some questions about the Shielings. Very well, said Shellah. We'll be outside the door. Chapter 4. Their first day at sea was uneventful. Calm seas, clear skies, a following breeze. Jonas saw no signs of anything troubling from his tour of the ship, just merchants on their way to the Shielings for the first spring wool. After they ate dinner in the galley with the crew and the fellow passengers, Shellah followed Nessa back to their room. Once Shellah lit the candle in its tin sconce and gave the room a quick check, they settled into their night clothes and bunks. They agreed Jonas would sit outside for the night watch, then sleep in the morning after breakfast. Shellah, tell me about the Shielings in Dundarlow, said Nessa as she made herself comfortable on the larger bed. I've heard about them, but have never been. My old school master and mentor settled there after he retired. He grew up in the Shielings, but never talked about them. Well, it's a large archipelago off the northern tip of Coram, Shellah started, wondering how high level she should go. For what my ma told me, ancient volcanoes are what made the islands tall, black, and rocky. We've got fierce seasonal winds, a lot of moorlands and bogs. It's a rough place most of the year. Many of the islands are uninhabited. Rich soils, though. Our sheep make the finest fleece and milk in the kingdoms, and there's hardy barley for porridge and whiskey. Shellah smiled. It's a good place, not a rich place or a place of many opportunities, but a good place with good people. Most of us never leave. And Dundarlow? A rugged fortress town. It's the main island, so much of the trade and government activity are there. Well, what counts for tribal government anyway. The Shielings are not known for being organized. It's kind of like Northport, but colder, with even more fishermen. It smells like Northport, too. Shellah yawned and leaned back in her bunk. Lots of wool plaid everywhere, and tweed. Nessa sat up. You're a native of the Shielings, so you've probably already sensed that I am a magic worker by trade. I attended the Alchemy University in Corm City, and I've always wondered why the gods gave the Shielings, of all people, little magics. Shellah laughed. It's to make up for us not having nice things like sunshine, wheat, or trees. And Nessa is a common given name in Dundarlo. Maybe it's in your blood from somewhere, too. Maybe, said Nessa. I don't know. My folks always lived in Coram City. My talents were identified early on via the coming-of-age omens, and so I was trained in magic there. It's rare for women. Usually women don't choose to become sorcerers. It hasn't always been easy. Successful, but not easy. She paused for a moment. So, on a related note, how does one become a swordswoman? Shellah stared up at the ceiling above her bunk, where the candlelight flickered shadows onto the wooden planks. The boat creaked gently in the calm seas. This was a tale she usually would not share, but building rapport and trust with clients was important, and Nessa had already revealed a bit about herself. My talents were also recognized early, if you could call it that. I slew my first reaver when I was 13. It was actually this time of year, come to think of it. I was on the moorland up behind my family's croft. It was my turn to gather the sheep in the evening, so I was away from the house when the reavers snuck up from the beach below. My dad and brother were away in Dundarlo selling the first fleeces, so my ma and older sister were alone in the croft. My dog heard something before I did as we came back down around the hill, and he started to whine softly. We approached in the shadows until I heard the screams. I ran to the house, my shepherd's crook in hand, and without thinking I brained a reaver from behind as he stood in the doorway, distracted, laughing as he watched another man trying to rape my sister. He never saw me coming. I pushed his body aside, then pulled the other off my sis. I jammed the end of my crook into his eye as the dog grabbed his leg, and when he started to scream, I jammed it into his throat until he choked and he was dead too. I remember my sister bleeding and crying, and my ma laying still on the floor. Another reaver tried to enter the house, but on seeing his dead comrades, he ran back to his boat before the dog or I could kill him too. They have never returned to Skyfast. Not a fun bedtime story, I know, but Ma recovered, and my sister soon married the biggest man she could find on Horfast, the next island over, and had her own big family. As a known killer, I was never likely to marry, but my da found an apprenticeship for me with the swordsmen in Dundarlo. It's not uncommon for women of the Shielings to take the sword, as we are tall and strong, and often have to protect our families. Nessa settled back into her bed and pulled up the blankets. The wind dancer gently rocked in the swell like a cradle. Well, let's hope we don't run into any of those reavers here. Agreed. With a flick of her hand, Shellah extinguished the candle flame in the sconce above her head and quickly nodded off to sleep. If you are enjoying this story, please like and subscribe for the latest episodes. I aim to have fresh chapters here weekly. I hope to see you soon for our next episode.